He's too old to raise children, they whispered at the adoption board. But when his daughters stood up to speak 10 years later, the same people were left speechless. James Wilson's leather shoes clicked against the marble floor of First National Bank's conference room. The sound echoed through the empty space as he arrived 15 minutes early for the monthly philanthropic board meeting, just as he had done for the past 5 years since retiring. "Morning, James," Sarah Chen, the board secretary, called out as she arranged papers at the long mahogany table. "Coffee's fresh." "Thanks, Sarah." He poured himself a cup, black, no sugar. The same way he'd taken it for 35 years in investment banking. "Anything interesting on today's agenda?" Sarah's expression changed. "Actually, yes. We've got a representative from Child Services coming in. Apparently, there's an urgent situation with a group of sisters." James nodded, taking his usual seat near the head of the table. At 6 to 5, he'd heard plenty of urgent situations. Most ended up being less urgent than advertised. The room filled gradually with the usual faces: retired executives, charity organizers, and community leaders. At exactly 9 a.m., Margaret Thompson from Child Services walked in, carrying a thick folder and looking like she hadn't slept. "Thank you all for having me," she began, not bothering with small talk. "We have an emergency situation with 8 sisters, ages 6 to 16. Their parents died in a car accident 3 months ago, and we've been trying to keep them together. But," she paused, straightening her glasses, "we're out of options. If we don't find a solution in the next 10 days, we'll have to separate them." James felt his hand tighten around his coffee cup. "Separate them?" The words came out before he could stop them. Margaret nodded. "We have interested families, but nobody willing or able to take all 8. The older girls understand what's happening. The younger ones?" She spread photos across the table. 8 smiling faces. 8 pairs of eyes. All sisters. All African American. All about to be split apart. "What's the hold-up?" James heard himself ask. "Surely there are families with the means." "It's complicated," Margaret replied. "Most families who could afford it don't want 8 children. Those who want them can't afford it. Then there's the age range, the fact that they're all sisters, their background." She didn't finish the sentence. She didn't have to. The meeting continued, but James barely heard it. His mind kept going back to 40 years ago, sitting across from Mr. Thompson, the investment banker who'd taken a chance on a poor kid from the wrong side of town. "Sometimes, James," he'd said, "the best investment isn't the safest one." After the meeting, James lingered. "Ms. Thompson," he called out as Margaret gathered her papers. "Could you tell me more about the sisters?" For the next hour, Margaret laid out the situation. The oldest, Jasmine, was 16, quiet, responsible, trying to be a mother to her sisters. Then came twins Maya and Mia at 14, polar opposites in personality but inseparable. 13-year-old Sophia was the artist. 11-year-old twins Ashley and Andrea were the athletes. 9-year-old Olivia was the chatterbox. And finally, 6-year-old Emma, still asking when Mommy and Daddy were coming back. "Can I meet them?" James asked. Margaret looked surprised. "Of course, but may I ask why?" James stood, straightening his jacket. "Because 40 years ago, someone took a chance on me. Maybe it's time I did the same for someone else." The drive to the group home took 20 minutes. James spent it running numbers in his head. His investment portfolio, $850,000. Annual income from investments and advisory work, $90,800. The 4-bedroom house he'd bought with his late wife, Sarah, thinking they'd fill it with children before cancer took her too soon. The group home was a converted Victorian mansion, its paint peeling and shutters crooked. Inside, chaos reigned. Girls ran through hallways. Somewhere, a baby cried. A teenager yelled about a missing phone charger. "Girls," Margaret called out, "could you all come to the living room? There's someone I'd like you to meet." They came in ones and twos. 8 pairs of eyes studied him with varying degrees of suspicion and curiosity. Emma, the youngest, clutched a worn teddy bear. Jasmine, the oldest, stood slightly in front of her sisters, protective. "This is Mr. Wilson," Margaret said. "He'd like to talk with you." James cleared his throat. "Hello, girls. I heard about your situation. You want to adopt one of us?" Jasmine asked bluntly. Her voice was hard, defensive. "Actually," James said, I was thinking about all of you. The room went silent. Even the baby somewhere upstairs stopped crying. That's not funny, Maya, or am I? He couldn't tell which twin said. I'm not joking, James replied. He turned to Margaret. What would be the first step? The next few hours blurred together. Forms. Questions. More forms. Background checks. Financial disclosures. Home studies. Through it all, the girls watched him, whispering among themselves. As the sun set, James stood to leave. Emma, the youngest, tugged at his sleeve. Are you really going to be our daddy? James knelt down to her level, aware of 7 other pairs of eyes watching. I'd like to try, if you'll let me. Why? Jasmine asked from across the room. Why would you want all of us? James looked at her, seeing the pain and distrust behind her question. Because 40 years ago, I was given a chance that changed my life. Because families shouldn't be divided. Because, he paused, choosing his words carefully. Because sometimes the best investments aren't the ones that make sense on paper. That night, James sat in his home office, surrounded by spreadsheets and financial projections. College funds, health insurance, food costs, clothing, school supplies. The numbers danced before his eyes. His phone rang. It was Margaret. Mr. Wilson, she said, her voice tense. We've hit a snag. The adoption board has concerns. They're questioning whether a single man your age can handle 8 children. They're expediting your case. But they are skeptical. James looked at the family photo on his desk, him and Sarah on their wedding day. Let them be skeptical, he said. I've got 10 days to prove them wrong. They'll need more than financial statements, Margaret warned. They'll want to know why. Really why? James watched the sunset through his office window, thinking of 8 faces. 8 futures. 8 lives hanging in the balance. Then I'll tell them, he said. I'll tell them everything. The call ended, and James turned back to his spreadsheets. Outside, darkness fell over the quiet neighborhood. Tomorrow would bring home inspectors, social workers, and countless questions. But tonight, in the silence of his office, James Wilson began to plan for a family of 9. He pulled out a fresh legal pad and wrote at the top, Project, Family. Below it, he listed 8 names. 8 futures. 8 reasons to prove everyone wrong. The clock on his wall ticked past midnight. James kept working, fueled by coffee and determination. He had 10 days to convince the world that a 65-year-old retired banker could be a father to 8 girls. 10 days to change 9 lives forever. His pen moved across the paper, making plans, running numbers, preparing arguments. Outside his window, the moon rose over a house that was either too empty or about to be too full, depending on how the next 10 days went. James Wilson had spent his life making safe investments. Now, at 65, he was about to make the riskiest one of all, and he couldn't wait to begin. The adoption board meeting room felt colder than it should have. James adjusted his tie, aware of the 7 pairs of eyes studying him from across the mahogany table. The 8th pair belonged to Judge Patricia Martinez, who was currently reading his application with a frown. Mr. Wilson, she began, setting down the papers. Your financial qualifications are impressive. However, I'm too old, James said flatly. The room shifted uncomfortably. That's one concern, Judge Martinez admitted. You're 65, seeking to adopt 8 children. The youngest would be only 24 when you turn 83. Have you considered every scenario? James interrupted, pulling out a folder, including provisions for guardianship if something happens to me. My investment portfolio is structured to provide for their education and care regardless of my status. Dr. Richard Chen, the child psychologist on the board, leaned forward. Mr. Wilson, raising 8 children isn't just about money. What about emotional support? Daily care? These girls have experienced trauma. James met his gaze, which is exactly why they shouldn't face more trauma by being separated. The afternoon dragged on with questions about his experience with children, none, his support system, limited, and his understanding of the challenges ahead, theoretical but thoroughly researched. We'll need time to review, Judge Martinez announced finally. And we'll need to meet with each sister individually. James felt his stomach tighten. Time isn't something we have much of. Then we'll expedite the process. But we won't rush it at the expense of these children's well-being. The next morning found James at the group home, waiting as each sister was called in for their interview. Jasmine went first, her back straight, chin high. 20 minutes later, she emerged with red eyes. "They asked if I trust you," she told James bluntly. "I said I don't know you well enough to trust you. But I trust you more than I trust their system to keep us together." The twins, Maya and MIA, went in together despite the board's protests. James could hear their voices rising through the door. They came out holding hands, faces set in identical expressions of defiance. "They tried to separate us for the interview," MIA spat. "So they needed to hear our individual thoughts. We told them we think as a team," Maya added. One by one, the sisters met with the board. Sophia brought her sketchbook, showing them drawings of all 8 sisters together. Ashley and Andrea talked about wanting to join the same soccer team. Olivia chatted nervously about everything and nothing. Emma just asked if she could keep her teddy bear in her new room. James's phone buzzed. A message from Robert Chang, his former colleague and current board member at First National. "Need to talk. Lunch? Marino's at 1. The restaurant was quiet when James arrived. Robert sat at their usual corner table, martini already in hand. "You've lost your mind," Robert said by way of greeting. James signaled the waiter for water. "Hello to you too, Robert. 8 children? At your age? The board's talking about it. Everyone's talking about it. What happened to our retirement plans? The consulting firm we discussed. Plans change. This isn't a change, James. This is a complete derailment. You're about to throw away everything you've built." James studied his old friend. "Did you know the oldest girl, Jasmine, is already taking business classes at the community center? The twins are top of their class in math. Sophia's art won a citywide competition." "That's not the point." "That's exactly the point," James cut in. "These girls have potential. They just need someone to invest in it. They need parents, not an investment banker. Maybe they need both." Robert's martini glass hit the table harder than necessary. "The community board is concerned. This reflects on all of us. Your decisions impact." "My decisions?" James felt heat rise in his neck. "My decisions impact 8 lives that are about to be torn apart. The community board's concern doesn't factor into that equation." The waiter approached. James stood before he could speak. "I've lost my appetite," he said, dropping enough cash for Robert's martini. "Bills covered." That night, James sat in his home office, calculator in hand. The numbers were tight, but workable. He'd need to liquidate some investments, restructure others. The college funds would be lean at first, but with careful management. His doorbell rang. Margaret Thompson stood on his porch, looking grave. "The board split," she said without preamble. 3-4, 3 against, 1 undecided. James felt his chest tighten. "The girls? Still at the group home. But James, there's interest from other families. Good families, with younger parents. They're willing to take 2 or 3 each." "No." The word came out like a gunshot. "James, I said no. Those girls stay together." Margaret sighed. "Then you need to convince Judge Martinez. She's the swing vote, and she's worried about your age, your lack of experience, your... When can I meet with her?" "Tomorrow morning. 9 a.m. James nodded. "I'll be ready." After Margaret left, James drove to the group home. The night staff knew him by now, let him in without question. In the living room, he found Jasmine helping Emma with her reading. "Mr. Wilson." Emma bounced up. "Are you here to take us home?" Jasmine shot her sister a warning look. "Emma, remember what we talked about? It's not that simple." "Actually," James said, sitting down, "I wanted to ask you all something." He looked at Jasmine. "Could you get your sisters?" Minutes later, all 8 girls gathered in the living room. James took a deep breath. "I need to know what you want," he said simply. "Not what you think you should want, or what others want for you. What do you want?" Silence fell. The sisters exchanged glances. Finally, Jasmine spoke. "We want to stay together. That's all we've ever wanted, even if it means living with an old man who doesn't know the first thing about being a father." "You're trying," Sophia said quietly. "That's more than most people do." Maya and MIA nodded in unison. "And you're good with numbers," Maya added. "We saw your spreadsheets. Could help with homework," MIA agreed. Ashley and Andrea exchanged looks. "You have a big backyard," Andrea ventured. "Good for soccer practice. And you make Emma laugh," Olivia piped up. "She hasn't laughed much since. Emma climbed into James's lap, settling there like she belonged. "I want you to be our daddy," she said simply. James felt something in his chest crack and heal all at once. "Okay," he said, his voice rough. "Okay then." That night, James worked until dawn, preparing for his meeting with Judge Martinez. He compiled growth projections, educational plans, daily schedules. But more importantly, he wrote from his heart about 8 girls who needed someone to believe in them. As the sun rose, he made one last notation on his legal pad. The best investments aren't always the safest ones. Sometimes, they're the ones that terrify you and fill you with hope at the same time. In 6 hours, he would face Judge Martinez. In 6 hours, he would fight for his family. Because somewhere between spreadsheets and bedtime stories, between financial plans and soccer practices, between his comfortable retirement and 8 uncertain futures, James Wilson had stopped thinking of this as an investment. He'd started thinking of it as coming home. James's phone rang at 6:43 a.m. Margaret Thompson's name flashed on the screen. "They're moving up the timeline," she said without greeting. 2 families from out of state. They want the older girls. Papers ready to sign today. James's coffee mug stopped halfway to his mouth. "They can't do that. We're still in process." "They can and they will. These are good families, James. Stable incomes, younger parents, experience with adoption." "When?" "Transportation's arranged for tomorrow morning. 8 a.m. The mug hit his desk. Coffee splashed across his papers. "I'm calling my lawyer." David Chen answered on the first ring, despite the early hour. "Already heard," he said. "Meeting set with the judge at 11. "It's the best I could do." James grabbed his keys. "I'm heading to the group home." "No, you're not," David said firmly. "You're coming to my office. Now. We have 4 hours to build a case that'll stop this." The law office smelled of leather and desperation. David's desk disappeared under stacks of papers and legal texts. "They're using your age against you," David said, shuffling through documents. "And your single status. And your lack of experience. But mostly your age. I'm 65, not dead. To family court. You might as well be." David looked up. "We need something else. Something that proves you're not just capable, but necessary." James pulled out his phone, scrolled through photos from his visits. 8 faces looked back at him. What about them? What about what they want? They are minors. Their wants are considered, not decisive. The older ones are still under 18. David sighed. "Show me your financial plans again." For 3 hours, they built their case. Financial stability. Educational opportunities. Character references. Support systems. At 10:45, James's phone buzzed. A text from Jasmine. "They told us about tomorrow. Please don't let them take us." James showed David the message. "Use it," David said. "Use everything." Judge Martinez's chambers felt smaller than James remembered. She sat behind her desk, reading their emergency petition. "Mr. Wilson," she said finally, "you're asking me to block 2 perfectly qualified adoptions in favor of your speculative application. I'm asking you to keep 8 sisters together. At what cost? The older girls could have stable homes, good schools, bright futures. They could have those things together. With me." The judge leaned back. "Convince me." James pulled out his folder. "Jasmine and MIA both show strong aptitude for business and finance. I can mentor them, guide their education. Maya's interested in social work, helping other foster children. Sophia's art therapy could help her process her trauma. The twins, Ashley and Andrea, need a school district with a strong sports program. My neighborhood has that. Olivia's testing showed high verbal skills but anxiety issues. She needs consistent support. And Emma." He paused. "Emma needs her sisters." "You've done your homework," Judge Martinez admitted. "I've done more than homework. I've gotten to know them. Their hopes, their fears, their potential. And you think you can provide for all that? At your age?" James met her gaze. "I think I'm the only one trying to." The judge checked her watch. "I'll review everything, Anne." A commotion outside interrupted her. Raised voices. Running feet. The door burst open. 8 girls spilled into the chamber, followed by a flustered bailiff. "I'm sorry, Your Honor," he started. They insisted. "You can't separate us." Maya and MIA spoke in unison. "Please," Jasmine added, more controlled but just as desperate. We've lost our parents. Don't make us lose each other too. Emma broke free from the group, running to James. He caught her automatically as she climbed into his lap. I want my daddy, she said clearly, wrapping her arms around his neck. The room froze. It was the first time any of them had called him that. Judge Martinez studied the scene before her. 8 girls, 1 man, forming a unit that defied conventional wisdom but somehow made sense. Clear the chamber, she said finally. Except Mr. Wilson and his lawyer. The girls resisted until Jasmine nodded. They filed out slowly, Emma clinging until her sisters gently pulled her away. That was inappropriate, the judge said once the door closed. And possibly rehearsed. If you think anyone can rehearse 8 traumatized girls, James replied, you don't know children. A ghost of a smile crossed her face. Perhaps not. She shuffled papers on her desk. I'm going to ask you something, Mr. Wilson, and I want complete honesty. Why are you really doing this? James thought of his empty house, his comfortable retirement plans, his safe, predictable life. 40 years ago, he began. I was a kid from the wrong neighborhood with good math skills and no future. A man named Thompson saw something in me, gave me a chance, changed my life. He paused. These girls have lost everything. Their parents, their home, their sense of security. The only thing they have left is each other. And now we're going to take that too. It's not that simple. It is that simple. 8 girls need a home. I have 1. They need support. I can provide it. They need to stay together. I want to make that happen. And in 10 years, 20, in 10 years, they'll be educated, confident young women with a future. In 20 years, they'll be changing the world. And I'll have had the privilege of helping make that happen. Judge Martinez was quiet for a long moment. Outside, the afternoon sun cast long shadows across her desk. I'm not comfortable with this, she said finally. Jamesy's heart sank. But, she continued, I'm less comfortable with separating them. She reached for her stamp. Emergency stay granted. You have 48 hours to complete your home study and finalize your petition. After that, she met his eyes. After that, they're either all yours or none of yours. Understood. James stood, legs shaky. Understood. In the hallway, 8 faces turned to him. Hope and fear battled in their expressions. We have 48 hours, he said. Jasmine stepped forward. To do what? To become a family. The next 48 hours became a blur of activity. Home inspectors arrived to check every room, every cupboard, every safety feature. Social workers interviewed neighbors, colleagues, even his doctor. James worked through the night, converting his home office into a study room with 8 desks. The guest room became a bedroom for the younger girls, his library transformed for the teenagers. Every space reimagined, repurposed, reborn. Emma's teddy bear sat on his desk as he worked, somehow both a question and an answer. At hour 4 to 7, Margaret Thompson arrived for the final inspection. The board's still split, she warned. But something's changed. Judge Martinez, she's fighting for you. James looked around his transformed home. We're fighting for us. The final hour ticked down in Judge Martinez's chambers. The adoption board assembled, faces grave. 8 girls sat with James, a unit now, unbreakable. The home study is complete, Judge Martinez announced. The financial reviews are done. The character witnesses have spoken. She looked at each face in turn. This is, by any measure, an unusual case. James felt 8 hands grip his arms, his shoulders, his hands. But sometimes, the judge continued, the unusual path is the right one. She lifted her pen. Petition granted. The room exploded in tears, laughter, hugs. Emma launched herself at James, soon followed by her sisters. 8 girls. His daughters. Daddy, Emma whispered into his neck. Can we go home now? James held his family close, his heart full to bursting. Yes, baby. We can go home. Outside the courthouse, the sun set on their first day as a legal family. 9 lives, forever changed by one decision, one chance, one leap of faith. James Wilson had spent his life making safe investments. But as he drove home with his 8 daughters, he knew that sometimes the best returns came from risking everything on love. The morning sun hadn't risen yet when chaos erupted in the Wilson household. It was their first official morning as a family, and nothing was going according to plan. The hot water's gone. Maya shouted from upstairs. Who took my blue sweater? Mia's voice echoed through the hallway. Dad! Olivia won't get out of the bathroom. Ashley and Andrea called in unison. James stood in the kitchen, coffee maker sputtering, trying to remember if he'd bought enough cereal. The word Dad still felt new, strange, wonderful. 5 minutes. Jasmine's authoritative voice cut through the noise. Anyone not ready in 5 minutes is walking to school. You can't make that decision, Sophia protested. Dad! James cleared his throat. Actually, Jasmine's right. 5 minutes, everyone. Emma appeared at his elbow, her school uniform wrinkled, hair a mess. Daddy, can you do my hair like Mommy used to? The kitchen went silent. James knelt down, faced with a task he'd never imagined having to do. I don't know how, sweetheart, but we can learn together. For now, maybe Jasmine can help. Jasmine was already moving, hair ties in hand. Come here, Em. I got you. The kitchen erupted again as 7 girls tried to eat breakfast at a table meant for 4. Cereal spilled. Toast burned. Orange juice sloshed. We need a schedule, James muttered, watching the chaos unfold. And a bigger table. And more bathrooms. Mia added, finally emerging with wet hair. And more closet space, Maya chimed in, wearing what was clearly her twin sweater. The drive to school felt like organizing a military operation. 3 different schools, 3 different start times, 8 different nervous. Remember, James said as they approached the first school, I'll pick you all up. Same order as drop-off. What if you forget? Emma asked, clutching her backpack. I won't forget. But what if? He won't forget. Jasmine interrupted firmly. Dad keeps his promises. The words hit James hard. These girls had lost so much, had so many promises broken. Every action, every word carried the weight of rebuilding trust. The elementary school came first. James walked Emma to her classroom, aware of curious stares from other parents. A 65-year-old white man with a young black daughter drew attention. Mr. Wilson, Emma's teacher, Ms. Rodriguez, approached. Could we speak privately? James knelt down to Emma's level. Go find your desk, sweetheart. I'll be right there. Ms. Rodriguez waited until Emma was out of earshot. I understand the adoption was just finalized. How is she adjusting? It's been less than 24 hours, James admitted. We're all adjusting. She talks about her mother. Often. I know. James watched Emma arrange her crayons. I'm not trying to replace anyone. I'm just trying to be here. The middle school drop-off went smoother. Ashley and Andrea spotted their soccer team friends immediately. Olivia lingered in the car. What if they ask questions? She whispered. Then you answer however you want, James replied. Or don't answer at all. Your story is yours to tell. High school proved the biggest challenge. Maya and Mia exited quickly, spotting their math club friends. Sophia clutched her sketchbook, slipping away quietly. But Jasmine sat frozen in the front seat. I can't do this, she said. Can't do what? Pretend everything's normal. Be the girl with the dead parents and the new white dad and 7 sisters to worry about. James turned off the engine. Then don't pretend. Be the girl who's surviving. Who's keeping her family together. Who's stronger than anyone knows. I'm 16. I'm not supposed to be strong yet. You're 16. You're not supposed to have gone through what you've gone through. But here we are. Jasmine wiped her eyes quickly. Will you really be here at 3? With bells on. Please never say that again. James laughed. Deal. The house felt eerily quiet after drop-offs. James stood in the living room, surveying the morning's destruction. Wet towels on the stairs. Breakfast dishes in the sink. Backpacks and shoes scattered everywhere. His phone buzzed. A text from Margaret. Home visit this afternoon. Standard post-adoption check. Another buzz. Robert, community board meeting today. Your presence is requested. A third. Ms. Rodriguez. Emma had a breakdown in class. Asking for her mom. James sat heavily on the stairs. The magnitude of what he'd taken on crashed over him. 8 lives. 8 hearts. 8 futures. His phone buzzed again. Jasmine, thank you for this morning. Something settled in his chest. He began cleaning up, making lists. They needed a bigger table. More storage. A morning schedule. But first, he needed to get to the school. Emma needed him. The elementary school counselor's office was painted in soothing blues and greens. Emma sat curled in a bean bag, tears dried on her cheeks. "Daddy!" She launched herself at him. "Hey, sweetheart." He held her close. "Rough morning. We had to draw our families." She showed him her picture. 9 stick figures, all holding hands. "Tommy said you can't be my real daddy because you're white and old." James felt anger flare, then fade. "What do you think?" "I think Tommy's stupid." She paused. "But can I still miss my first daddy? And mommy? Always." James brushed her curls back. "Having a new daddy doesn't mean forgetting your first one. Hearts are big enough for lots of love." The counselor, watching quietly, made notes. By afternoon, the house transformed. James had installed additional storage, ordered a larger dining table, and created a bathroom schedule. Small steps toward order. The home visit went surprisingly well. Margaret noted the changes, the attempts at organization, the signs of adaptation. "It's chaos," James admitted. "But it's organized chaos." "It's family," Margaret corrected. The community board meeting, however, was another story. Robert and his colleagues expressed concerns about James's new situation. "Your judgment seems impaired," Robert said carefully. "Perhaps a break from advisory duties." "My judgment is fine," James replied. "My priorities have changed." The day ended as chaotically as it began. 8 girls, 3 schools, mountains of homework, dinner disasters, and bathroom battles. "We need rules," Jasmine announced at dinner, now served at a makeshift table arrangement. "And consequences," Meyer added. "And rewards," MIA countered. "And ice cream," Emma concluded. James looked at his daughters, his family, and saw not just chaos, but possibility. Not just challenges, but opportunities. Not just 8 individuals, but one unit. "Tomorrow," he said, "we'll make rules. Tonight, we'll have ice cream." Later, after bedtime stories and final bathroom runs, James sat in his transformed office. 8 desks waited for morning homework. 8 futures waited to unfold. His phone lit up one last time. A photo from Jasmine, all 8 girls, squished together for a selfie, making faces. The caption read, "Day 1. We survived." James saved the photo, set it as his background. Day 1 indeed. The first of many. Outside his window, the moon rose over a house that was no longer too empty or too full, but exactly right. James stared at the wall of papers before him, each covered in complex mathematical equations that might as well have been written in ancient Greek. Helping with math homework had seemed like a natural fit for a former investment banker. He hadn't counted on 8 different math assignments at 8 different levels, all due tomorrow. "That's not how Mrs. Peterson showed us," Maya said, pointing at his work on her algebra problem. "But this is how it works," James insisted, tapping his calculator. "Her way is faster. My way is proven, Dad." Jasmine looked up from her calculus textbook. "Maybe stick to what their teachers are teaching." The homework station they'd set up in his converted office was crowded with all 8 girls working simultaneously. The noise level alone made concentration difficult. "I hate fractions." Emma suddenly burst into tears, throwing her pencil across the room. James reached for her, but Sophia got there first. "Hey, Em, remember how we divide cookies?" "Same thing. Cookies aren't math." "Actually," James began, ready to explain the mathematical principles of division. "Dad," Jasmine interrupted again. Not helping. The doorbell rang, saving him from having to admit defeat. It was Margaret Thompson, right on time for their weekly check-in. "How's the homework situation?" she asked, noting the chaos behind him. "We're adapting." A crash from upstairs, followed by shouting. Ashley's voice carried down. "She ruined my jersey." "I did not," Andrea yelled back. It was already torn. James closed his eyes briefly. Still adapting. Margaret followed him upstairs, where they found the twins in a standoff. A soccer jersey lay between them, a small tear visible along the seam. "Girls," James started, but they both turned on him. "You don't understand," Ashley shouted. "This was Mom's. She wore it in college." The hallway went silent. Even the homework arguments downstairs ceased. James knelt by the jersey. "We can fix this," he said quietly. "There's a tailor downtown who does repairs. We'll take it first thing tomorrow." "It won't be the same," Ashley whispered. "No," James agreed. "But maybe that's okay." Maybe we can honor the old while accepting the new. Andrea picked up the jersey carefully. Mom would want us to share it. The sisters hugged, crisis temporarily averted. But James saw Margaret making notes, and his stomach tightened. Later that evening, after managing to get through most of the homework and arranging tomorrow's tailor visit, James faced his next challenge: parent-teacher conferences. All 8 of them, back to back. Emma's teacher spoke first. She's struggling to focus. Spends a lot of time drawing her family. All 9 of you? Is that bad? It's processing. But her math scores. She slid a paper across the desk. Red marks cover the page. Olivia's teachers reported anxiety issues. She freezes during presentations. Won't speak in class. The twins' soccer coach had concerns about their aggressive play. They're taking their frustrations out on the field. Sophia's art teacher was the only one with purely positive feedback. She's channeling everything into her work. It's remarkable. Maya and Mia's math teacher praised their skills but worried about their isolation. They only talked to each other. Then came Jasmine's teachers. She's falling asleep in class, her English teacher reported. Missing assignments. She's up late helping the others, James explained. I'll talk to her. By the time he got home, his head spun with action items, concerns, and suggestions. He found Jasmine still awake, practicing her calculus. You should be sleeping. So should you. She didn't look up. How bad were the conferences? Not bad. Different challenges for different girls. He sat beside her. Your teachers are worried. I'm fine. You're exhausted. Someone has to help with homework. And bedtime. And that someone should be me. Jasmine finally met his eyes. No offense, Dad, but you kind of suck at the homework help. James laughed despite himself. I'm learning. We all are. She closed a textbook. Did you know Mom used to braid Emma's hair in this special way? Every morning. I've been trying to learn from YouTube videos, but I can't get it right. Show me the videos. We'll learn together. The next morning, James and Jasmine sat with Emma, watching hair tutorials before sunrise. Their first attempts were disastrous. Emma's patience wore thin. It's ugly, she declared, looking in the mirror. It's unique, James offered. It's practice, Jasmine corrected. We'll get better. The doorbell rang. Margaret again, this time with an unexpected visitor. Judge Martinez. Surprise inspection, the judge announced, taking in Emma's creative hairstyle without comment. They toured the house, noted the homework station, the new chore charts, the larger dining table, the fixed soccer jersey hanging carefully in the twins' room. The community board has raised concerns, Judge Martinez said finally, about your ability to handle all this. The community board isn't here at 6 a.m. learning to braid hair, James replied. They are not here for the homework struggles or the soccer games or the midnight tears. That's exactly their point. This is a lot for anyone, let alone my age. James interrupted. Yes, I'm 65. Yes, this is hard. Yes, we're all still learning. But we're learning together. A commotion from upstairs interrupted them. Sophia's voice carried down. Dad, come quick. Maya did it. They rushed upstairs to find Maya beaming, Emma beside her showing off a perfectly braided hairstyle. I figured it out, Maya exclaimed. If you think of it like a math pattern, everything's math with you. Maya rolled her eyes, but she was smiling. Judge Martinez watched the scene unfold, one sister helping another, while others offered commentary and suggestions. A family finding its rhythm. The community board, she said quietly to James, doesn't see these moments. These moments are all I see, James replied. That evening, homework went smoother. James learned to step back, let the girls help each other, intervening only when needed. The twins shared soccer practice stories. Olivia spoke up at dinner, just a little. Sophia showed her latest art project. Maya and Mia explained a math concept to Emma using cookies, just as their mother once had. Later, James found Jasmine in his office, updating their family calendar. We're getting better at this, she said without looking up. We are, but it's still hard. It is. Good. She finally met his eyes. Hard means it matters. James looked at their family photo, now hanging prominently on the wall. 8 girls, 1 dad, all learning, all adapting, all trying. It matters more than anything, he said. Outside, the sun set on another day of their new normal. It wasn't perfect, It wasn't always smooth, but it was theirs. And they were learning, one braid, one homework assignment, one family moment at a time. The letter from James's financial advisor sat unopened on his desk for 3 days. He knew what it would say. The market hadn't been kind lately, and 8 college funds took more resources than he'd initially calculated. Dad! Jasmine stood in the doorway of his office, holding another envelope. Second notice from the orthodontist. For Maya and Mia's braces. James picked up his calculator. How much? 8,000. Each. He typed in numbers, deleted them, typed again. The math wasn't working. We can wait, Maya said from behind Jasmine. It's not that bad. Your teeth are hurting you, James replied, not looking up. We're not waiting. But I'll figure it out. He finally opened the letter from his advisor. The numbers were worse than he'd feared. That night, after the girls were asleep, James sat surrounded by financial statements. His retirement account had taken a hit. The college funds were growing too slowly. Property taxes had increased. His chest felt tight. He loosened his tie, but the pressure didn't ease. The pressure moved to his left arm. Dad? Emma's voice came from the doorway. I had a bad dream. James tried to stand, but the room spun. Go, get Jasmine. Daddy! Emma's voice rose in panic. Jasmine! Help! The next few minutes blurred. Voices. Sirens. Jasmine taking charge, calling 911. Maya and MIA watching Emma. Sophia holding his hand in the ambulance. The emergency room was bright, sterile. A doctor spoke about stress, minor heart episode, warning signs. Your daughters did exactly right, the doctor said. But you need to reduce your stress levels. Jasmine sat beside his bed, her face tight with worry. We're too much, she whispered. This is too much. No. James tried to sit up, but monitors beeped in protest. Look at the numbers, Dad. Look at reality. 8 kids, college funds, braces, everything. It's killing you. Jasmine, Maya and MIA already talked about getting jobs. Sophia wants to sell her art. But it's not enough, is it? Before James could answer, a social worker entered the room. Behind her, Margaret Thompson looked apologetic. Standard procedure, Margaret explained. When a single parent has a health crisis, the social worker opened her file. We need to discuss contingency plans. No, James said firmly, monitors beeping faster. We're not having this conversation. Mr. Wilson, your condition was minor and temporary. Nevertheless, as a single parent of 8 minors, we need to establish. Get out. Jasmine stood, her voice cold. Get out now. The social worker left, but the damage was done. That night, as James lay in the hospital bed, he heard his daughters whispering in the hallway. We should go, Maya said, before they make us split up willingly. Mia's voice cracked. That's your solution. Better than watching Dad die trying to keep us together. James pressed the call button. A nurse appeared. I need to go home, he said. Now. Sir, protocol requires. My family is falling apart. I need to go home. An hour later, against medical advice, James walked through his front door. He found all 8 girls in the living room, bags partially packed. No one is leaving, he announced. Dad, you should be in the hospital. Jasmine protested. I should be here. With my family. He sat heavily in his armchair. All of you, sit down. We need to talk. Slowly, 8 girls found seats. Emma crawled into his lap, careful of the heart monitor they'd insisted he wear. I saw the numbers, Jasmine began. Numbers change. Your heart is fine. But you're right about one thing. We need to make changes. He pulled out his phone, showed them his investment portfolio. I've been trying to do everything myself. Protect my retirement. Fund your colleges. Handle everyday expenses. It's not working. That's what we're saying, Maya started, but James held up his hand. So we adapt. I'm selling the vacation property in Florida. But I'm liquidating some investments. Restructuring others. And most importantly, he looked at each of them. I'm accepting help. What help? Sophia asked. Robert called. Offered me back my position on the advisory board, with some adjustments for my new schedule. Margaret found a program that helps with education costs for adopted children. And your Aunt Sarah? She wants to be part of your lives. Mom's sister. Ashley's voice was small. We haven't seen her since. She wants to help. With college funds. With braces. With everything. We can't take her money, Jasmine protested. It's not taking. It's family helping family. He squeezed Emma closer. Which is something I need to learn too. What do you mean? I've been trying to prove I can do this alone. Be everything you need. But that's not what family means. What does it mean? Emma asked. It means letting people help. It means Maya and Mia can tutor math if they want to. Sophia can sell her art. The twins can help coach junior soccer for extra money. But not because we're desperate. Because we're a family, and families work together. In your heart. Jasmine pressed. We'll be fine if I stop trying to be Superman and start being just Dad. The room was quiet for a moment. Then Olivia, who rarely spoke in groups, said, I can help with Emma's homework. I'm good at English. I can pack lunches, Andrea offered. I can handle the laundry schedule, Mia added. One by one, they found ways to contribute. Not from desperation, but from love. But you have to promise something too, Jasmine said to James. Promise you'll tell us when it's too much. Promise you'll let us help before it gets to this point. I promise. And promise you'll let Aunt Sarah help. And take your medicine. And, Jasmine. He smiled. I promise. That night, none of the girls wanted to sleep in their own rooms. They dragged mattresses and blankets to the living room, surrounding James's armchair. Like camping, Nema declared. Like family, Sophia corrected. James watched his daughters settle in. Maya and Mia checking his heart monitor. Ashley and Andrea organizing tomorrow's schedule. Olivia reading to Emma. Sophia sketching the scene. Jasmine making sure everyone was covered. His phone buzzed. A text from Robert. Board meeting tomorrow. Take all the time you need. Another from Margaret. Social services satisfied with family support system. A third from Sarah. College fund paperwork ready when you are. Give the girls my love. James looked at his family, sprawled across the living room floor. The pressure in his chest was gone, replaced by something else. Something lighter. Daddy. Emma's sleepy voice rose from her blanket nest. Are you okay? Better than okay, sweetheart. Good. Because we need you. I need you too, he said. All of you. The night settled around them, 9 hearts beating in rhythm. Tomorrow would bring challenges. Bills to pay. Colleges to plan for. Braces to afford. But tonight, in this room, they were simply family. And that was enough. Maya stared at the investment portfolio spreadsheet on her father's computer screen, her forehead wrinkled in concentration. So the compound interest means the money grows exponentially, James explained, pointing to the numbers. See how it accelerates over time. Like when we helped Emma understand multiplication, Mia added from the other side of the desk. Small numbers become big numbers fast. It was Saturday morning, 6 months after James's heart scare. The twins had started showing up in his office every weekend, curious about his work. At first, he thought they were just checking on his health. Then he realized they were genuinely interested. Dad! Maya's voice was hesitant. We've been thinking. Dangerous words, James teased. What if we could help other families like ours? James leaned back in his chair. What do you mean? Mia pulled out a notebook filled with calculations. We researched adoption statistics. Most siblings get separated because of financial issues. But what if there was a way to help families afford to keep them together? Like a foundation, Maya added. But with investment strategies to make it sustainable. James felt something catch in his throat. These girls, who'd once been statistics themselves, wanting to change the system from within. Show me your numbers, he said. They spent the morning running calculations, discussing investment strategies, exploring possibilities. James taught them about risk assessment, market analysis, sustainable growth. You're good at this, he said finally. Both of you. We had a good teacher, Mia replied. The doorbell interrupted their work. Margaret Thompson stood on the porch, holding a stack of papers. Quarterly review, she said, then noticed Maya and Mia's excited faces. What's got them so worked up? Show her, James encouraged. The twins launched into their presentation, explaining their idea for a foundation to help keep adopted siblings together. Margaret's eyes widened as she looked at their calculations. This is impressive, she said. Actually, we have a board meeting next week about funding issues. Would you consider presenting this? Maya and MIA looked at James. Your choice, he said. No pressure. Yes, they answered in unison. The next week flew by in a whirlwind of preparation. The whole family got involved. Sophia designed presentation materials. Jasmine helped with public speaking tips. Even Emma contributed, insisting they include pictures of real families like ours. The morning of the presentation, James found the twins in the kitchen at 5 a.m., practicing their speech. Nervous. Terrified, Maya admitted. Good, James said. Use it. Remember why this matters. The boardroom was packed. James recognized faces that had once doubted his ability to raise 8 girls. Robert sat in the front row, looking curious. Maya and MIA stood, smoothed their skirts, and began. 6 months ago, we were almost separated from our sisters, Maya started. Statistics said we'd be better off apart, MIA continued. Numbers said it wasn't financially viable to keep us together. But statistics don't tell the whole story, Maya picked up. And numbers can change. They presented their research, their calculations, their vision for a foundation that would combine financial expertise with practical support for adoptive families. We're not just asking for donations, MIA explained. We're proposing an investment in families. The room was silent when they finished. Then Robert stood. How much seed money would you need? By the end of the meeting, they had commitments for initial funding, offers of professional support, and a list of potential partner organizations. In the car ride home, the twins were quiet. You okay? James asked. Did we just start a foundation? Maya asked. I think you did. At 14. MIA added. Age is just a number, James smiled. Someone taught me that. At home, they found the rest of the family had prepared a celebration. Sophia had painted a banner. Ashley and Andrea had organized party games. Olivia had helped Emma bake cookies. To the future CEOs, Jasmine toasted with apple juice. To family, the twins corrected. Later that night, James found Maya and MIA in his office again, already working on next steps. You need to rest, he said. Just one more calculation, Maya pleaded. The foundation can wait until tomorrow. But there are families out there right now, MIA protested. Families like ours, being told they can't stay together because of money. James sat down heavily. I know, but you can't help them if you burn out. Balance, remember? They nodded reluctantly. As they headed upstairs, James heard Maya say, maybe we should take business classes at the community college. Already looking into it, MIA replied. The next few weeks brought changes. The twins started advanced math classes at the community college. Jasmine helped them set up meetings with potential partners. The younger girls contributed ideas from their own experiences. One evening, James overheard Ashley tell a friend on the phone, My sisters are going to change the world. They already have, he whispered to himself. The foundation began to take shape. Maya and Mia's idea expanded beyond just financial support. They included mentoring programs, educational resources, practical assistance for new adoptive families. We need a name, Sophia said one night at dinner. The Wilson Family Foundation? Andrea suggested. Too boring, Ashley countered. What about together? Emma piped up. Because that's what it's about, right? Keeping people together. The table fell silent. Together Foundation, Maya tested the words. Perfect, MIA agreed. James watched his daughters plan and dream, their initial idea growing into something bigger than any of them had imagined. The girls who'd once been considered a financial liability were now creating solutions for others in similar situations. One night, as he helped the twins with some particularly complex calculations, Maya looked up suddenly. Dad? Thank you. For what? For showing us that numbers don't have to be barriers. They can be bridges. MIA nodded. And for teaching us that investment isn't just about money. James thought about the day he'd first heard about 8 sisters about to be separated. About spreadsheets and calculations that said it couldn't work. About proving those numbers wrong. You know what the best investment I ever made was? He asked. What? He gestured around the house, where their sisters' voices carried from various rooms. Homework being done. Games being played. Life being lived. This, he said simply. Us. The twins hugged him, careful of his heart monitor, which now beeped steadily and safely. Outside his office, Emma's voice called out, Dad. Maya. MIA. Sophia finished the foundation logo, They found the family gathered around Sophia's sketchbook. 8 hands holding each other, forming an unbroken circle. "It's us," Emma said proudly. "It's everyone," Maya corrected. "Everyone who needs to stay together." James looked at his daughters, the future business leaders, the artists, the athletes, the dreamers, and saw not just his family, but a force for change. The Together Foundation was just the beginning. The thick envelope from Stanford University sat unopened on the kitchen table. Jasmine stared at it, hands shaking slightly. "Open it," Maya urged. "What if it's a no?" Jasmine whispered. Then Harvard and Yale were still yes, MIA reminded her. James stood in the doorway, watching his oldest daughter face this moment. 2 years had passed since their first chaotic morning as a family. Now here they were, college acceptance letters and financial aid packages spread across the table. "Whatever it says," he said, "we're proud of you." Jasmine took a deep breath and tore open the envelope. Her eyes scanned the first line. "I got in." The kitchen erupted. 7 sisters swarmed Jasmine with hugs and cheers. Emma, now 8, jumped up and down chanting, "Stanford! Stanford! Full scholarship," Jasmine added, her voice trembling. "The Together Foundation Fellowship for Children from Non-Traditional Families." James felt his chest tighten, not from stress this time, but from pride. The foundation Maya and MIA had started was already changing lives, beginning with their own sister. "We need to celebrate," he declared. After the presentation, Jasmine reminded them. The community board's waiting. The Together Foundation had grown beyond anyone's expectations. What started as the twins' idea had become a full-fledged organization, with Maya and Mia's investment strategies helping dozens of families stay together. The community board meeting room was packed. James recognized faces that had once doubted him, now here to listen to his daughters present their first year's results. Maya stood at the podium, confident in a way that still amazed him. "In our first year, the Together Foundation has helped keep 15 sibling groups united through adoption." MIA clicked to the next slide. "Our investment portfolio has grown by 12%, allowing us to expand our support services. But numbers don't tell the whole story," Maya continued. "So we'd like to introduce you to some of our families." The doors opened. 5 families walked in, parents and children who'd been helped by the foundation. Among them was a grandmother who'd been able to adopt her 4 grandchildren, and a young couple who'd kept 3 brothers together. James watched the board members' faces as they heard story after story. Robert, his old friend who'd once called him crazy, wiped tears from his eyes. "And now," MIA announced, "we'd like to share our biggest initiative yet." The twins unveiled their new project, a mentorship program pairing experienced adoptive families with new ones. The Wilson family would be the first mentors. "Because sometimes," Maya said, looking at James, "all you need is someone to show you what's possible." After the presentation, congratulations poured in. Robert approached James, shaking his head in amazement. "I was wrong," he admitted. "What you've built here, it's extraordinary." "They built it," James corrected, watching his daughters interact with the other families. "I just gave them the chance." Back home, the celebration continued. Sophia unveiled her latest artwork, a mural she'd painted in the foundation's new office building. Ashley and Andrea showed off the youth sports program they'd started for adopted children. Olivia, no longer shy, talked about the writing workshop she was planning for kids to share their stories. Emma tugged at James's sleeve. "Daddy, tell them about my project." "What project?" Jasmine asked. Emma proudly held up a children's book she'd written and illustrated with Sophia's help. "It's called My Big Family. It's for kids like us." James watched his youngest daughter read her book to the family, explaining in 8-year-old terms how love makes a family, not matching faces or ages or backgrounds. Later that night, as the excitement settled, James found Maya and MIA in his office, already working on new projections. The mentorship program could expand nationwide, Maya said without looking up. "We'd need more infrastructure," MIA added. "And you need to sleep," James reminded them. "Stanford doesn't accept zombies." They laughed. The twins had their own college acceptance letters to consider, both having been admitted early to top business schools. "Dad," Maya's voice turned serious. "Do you ever regret it? Taking all of us?" James looked at the family photo on his wall, no longer the awkward first-day picture, but a recent one showing 9 people who fit together perfectly. "Never," he said. "Not for a second." Even with the heart scare, the financial stress, everything we put you through, everything we went through together, he corrected. And look what came from it. MIA gestured at their foundation paperwork. We thought we were just helping other families. But it's more than that now. It's changing the whole system, Meyer added. The way people think about adoption, about keeping siblings together, about what makes a family, James finished. A knock at the door interrupted them. Jasmine stood there, holding her Stanford acceptance letter. The foundation fellowship, she said. Did you have anything to do with that? Actually, Meyer grinned. That was all Emma's idea. She said if we're helping other families go to college, we should help our own family too. Out of the mouths of babes, James murmured. Jasmine sat down heavily. I can't believe how much has changed. 2 years ago, we were about to be separated. Now you're going to Stanford, IA said. The twins are starting their own business empire, Meyer added. Sophia's art is in galleries, Jasmine continued. The twins are soccer champions, James contributed. Olivia's writing is being published, Meyer said. And Emma? MIA smiled. Emma's teaching everyone what family really means. They sat in comfortable silence, listening to the sounds of their family throughout the house. Sophia and Emma giggling over their next art project. Ashley and Andrea practicing their presentation for the youth sports program. Olivia typing away at her latest story. We should document this, Meyer said suddenly. All of it. For other families. Show them it's possible. MIA agreed. Show them it's worth it, Jasmine added. James watched his daughters plan their next project, their eyes bright with purpose. The scared girls from 2 years ago were gone, replaced by young women who knew their worth, their power, their place in the world. Dad! Emma's voice called from downstairs. Can you help me with the ending of my book? Coming, sweetheart. He stood, smiling at the older girls. Duty calls. As he headed downstairs, he heard Maya say, You know, Dad's story would make a pretty good book too. The investment banker who invested in love. MIA suggested. Too cheesy, Jasmine laughed. How about together ? Emma's voice floated up. Simple. True. James smiled. Simple. True. Like love. Like family. Like the legacy they were building, one day at a time. 10 years. James adjusted his tie in the mirror, taking in the silver hair that had grown a bit whiter, the laugh lines that had deepened around his eyes. At 75, he wasn't the same man who'd walked into that first adoption board meeting. He was better. Dad! Emma's voice carried up the stairs. Everyone's arriving. The occasion was double, the 10-year anniversary of their adoption and the Together Foundation's annual gala. The house buzzed with activity as 8 daughters prepared to present their decade of work to the world. Jasmine, now 26, stood in the living room directing operations. Her Stanford business degree hung on the wall beside Maya and Mia's Harvard diplomas. The press is outside, she announced as James came downstairs. They want the whole family for photos. Just like old times, James smiled, remembering their first family photo. The front lawn had been transformed into an event space. Hundreds of chairs faced a small stage. Banners displaying the Together Foundation's logo, Sophia's design of interlocked hands, hung everywhere. Mr. Wilson. A familiar voice made him turn. Judge Martinez stood there, older but still sharp-eyed. 10 years. Who would have thought? You did, he reminded her. You gave us a chance. You proved me right. She gestured to where his daughters greeted guests. Though I never imagined this. Neither had he. The Together Foundation had grown beyond their wildest dreams. Maya and Mia's investment strategies had helped keep over 200 sibling groups united. Jasmine's policy work had changed adoption laws in 12 states. Sophia's art therapy programs helped traumatized children heal. The twins' youth sports initiative had gone national. Olivia's writing workshops gave adopted children a voice. And Emma, his youngest, now 18 and headed to Yale, had published a series of children's books about non-traditional families. Dad! Maya called. They are ready for us. The family gathered for photos. No more awkward poses or uncertain smiles. They fit together perfectly, 8 daughters and their father, a unit forged by choice and strengthened by love. Robert Chang approached as the photographers finished. The board members are all here, he said. Even the ones who opposed you back then. They want to hear the girls speak. James nodded. They've been practicing for weeks. The ceremony began as the sun started to set. Hundreds of people filled the chairs: adoptive families, social workers, community leaders, and most importantly, children who'd been kept together because of their work. Emma took the stage first, poised and confident. 10 years ago, I was 6 years old and scared of losing my sisters. Today, I'm 18 and about to start college, thanks to a man who chose to become our father when everyone said he couldn't. She told their story, not the polished version from press releases, but the real one. The morning chaos, the homework struggles, the heart scare that had almost torn them apart. Maya and MIA spoke next, presenting the foundation's achievements. But our biggest success isn't in the numbers, Maya said. It's in the families, MIA finished, gesturing to the crowd. One by one, people stood, siblings who'd stayed together, parents who'd been able to adopt, children who'd found homes. The impact of their work made visible in hundreds of faces. Sophia unveiled her latest project, a massive mural featuring photographs of every family they'd helped, arranged to form a larger image of their own first family photo. Ashley and Andrea presented videos from their sports programs, showing adopted children finding confidence and community through athletics. Olivia, no longer the shy girl who couldn't speak in class, read excerpts from her award-winning book about adoption stories. Then Jasmine took the stage. 10 years ago, I didn't trust anyone, especially not a 65-year-old white man who wanted to adopt 8 black girls. She paused, meeting James's eyes. I've never been so happy to be wrong. The crowd laughed, but James felt tears forming. Our father taught us that investment isn't just about money, Jasmine continued. It's about believing in potential, about taking risks for the right reasons, about seeing beyond numbers to the hearts beneath. She gestured to the audience. Look around. Every family here represents a risk someone took, a chance someone gave, a love someone chose. The original adoption board members sat in the front row. James watched their faces as his daughter spoke, saw the amazement there. These were the same people who'd doubted him, who'd said it couldn't work, who'd wanted to separate the sisters. We have an announcement, Maya said, joining Jasmine on stage. All 8 sisters lined up together. The Together Foundation is expanding, MIA explained. We're opening offices in every state, creating college scholarships for adopted children, Sophia added. Building community centers, Ashley and Andrea said together. Publishing stories that need to be heard, Olivia continued. And making sure, Emma finished, that no child has to lose their siblings just because adults think it's too hard to keep them together. The applause was thunderous. James felt a hand on his shoulder. Margaret Thompson stood there, tears in her eyes. Your daughters want you on stage, she said. James walked up slowly, aware of every eye on him. His daughters surrounded him, just as they had that first day in court. 10 years ago, Jasmine said into the microphone, a man chose to become our father. Today, we want to honor that choice. They unveiled a plaque. The first piece of the foundation's new headquarters building would bear his name. Not because he's our father, Maya explained, but because he taught us what family really means, MIA finished. Emma, still his baby despite being college-bound, hugged him tight. We love you, Dad. James looked out at the crowd. Hundreds of families whole and together because his daughters had refused to be separated. Because they'd turned their own story into hope for others. I made a lot of investments in my life, he said when he could finally speak. But none ever paid off like this one. Later that night, after the crowds had gone and the cameras had left, the family sat in their living room just like they had 10 years ago. Emma pulled out her mother's old photo album, added their latest family picture beside the first one they'd ever taken. Look how scared we all were, Sophia observed. Look how far we've come, Jasmine corrected. James watched his daughters, accomplished, confident, compassionate women who'd changed not just their own lives but hundreds of others. Dad, Emma looked up from the album. Remember when you told the judge that in 20 years we'd be changing the world? I remember. We didn't wait 20 years. No, they hadn't. They'd started changing the world the moment they became a family. His heart monitor, now just a routine precaution, beeped steadily. His investment portfolio had recovered and grown. The college funds had done their job. But his greatest returns weren't in any bank account. They were right here, in this room, in 8 faces that had gone from scared and uncertain to strong and purposeful. In hundreds of families who'd stayed together because his daughters refused to be separated. In a legacy of love that would continue long after he was gone. Together, Emma said softly, touching their first family photo. Together, 8 sisters and 1 father echoed. Outside, the sun set on 10 years of proving impossible things possible. Of turning fear into hope, doubt into determination, separation into unity. James Wilson had made many investments in his 75 years. But none had ever yielded returns quite like love.